Your other name is Najuma.
Yes, my other name is Najuma, proudly Muganda.
Right, and proudly a speaker of Luganda.
Yes, I do
Also.
speak Luganda.
That is your mother tongue.
That is my mother tongue, yes.
Okay, so you're Katikkiro, or you're Prime Minister of the Buganda Kingdom.
Yeah.
Charles Peter Mayiga is wondering why Luganda can't be made compulsory to all the schools within Buganda Kingdom. Why I should say the central region. He believes that Luganda can greatly help learners to better understand the subjects being taught to them in their mother tongue. Mayiga was making these remarks at the kingdom, As the kingdom was... Mayiga made these remarks as the kingdom submitted its views aimed at making Uganda's education system better to the officials of the Education Policy Review Commission. And so it looks like, this is a serious suggestion that the Katikkiro of Buganda is making. He wants Luganda to be taught in schools.
Actually, not only Luganda. He says that this is what he said. I will paraphrase what he said. He said that the increased emphasis on teaching local languages in education noted guidelines on how to use a certain product are written in different languages, which cannot be easily understood. Basically, what he's saying is if schools are in Buganda, central region, where Luganda is the main language, the kids there should be taught Luganda. And if the schools are in, let's say, Western Uganda, they should be taught their mother tongue, which is Kinyankole. He's not saying that the language of instruction should be the mother tongue, but he says it should be on the syllabus.
Oh, okay. All right. So he's saying, so depending on the region, that should be the language
exactly
taught to the students
it
there.
It should be one of the languages, because in most schools, they will instruct children in English, and they will only teach them only that language. They will not instruct them with any other language.
But just in order to economize time and resources, don't you think English ought to be the preferred language of instruction nationwide, regardless of region, because it is an international language? When people finish school, this is the language they're going to be using as they do business, in the corporate world, and even in the public sector.
No, it is already the official language of instruction, and the Katikkiro is not saying instruct students in Luganda, but is saying that for people to understand other languages, it is important for them to first learn a mother tongue. And it is true, because according to research by UNESCO, they say that children's first languages are very optimal for literacy and learning throughout primary school. So you see where the Katikkiro is coming from.
You know, I don't speak my own mother language. And I don't even know why we say mother language or mother tongue, because a lot of us, our tribes are adopted from the tribes of our fathers.
Yeah.
So if your father is a Muganda, you're a Muganda. So
it has nothing to do with gender, really. I don't know why it was termed that, but it has nothing to do with your father. It has something to do with your tribe or language. What is the language spoken by your tribe? Where you come from? I'm a Muganda, and I speak Luganda.
I just think that really the priority should be given to the other subjects that are being taught, because that's where the bigger crisis lies.
Actually, the crisis lies in most of our traditional languages becoming extinct.
How is that?
Did you know that in France, up until years later, there was no French. French was in the urban centers, and other regions had their own mother tongues that have become extinct because they speak French right now.
What do you mean? So in the nation of France, the language of, or the French language became the dominant language, was taught in school. So all of the other regional languages
later, but before that there were other languages that were being spoken.
I didn't even know there were like other languages.
So that's why I'm saying that our languages, especially here in Africa, are becoming extinct because we prefer to speak English or the languages of our colonizers as compared to those people. For instance, if you go to Italy today, you're going to find most people speaking Italian. You'll go to India and they have their local languages. You'll go to China. But when it comes to Africa, you come to Uganda and people don't see why you should know your local language to begin with.
But where do you draw the line, if I may ask you? Because, for example, you make say you're a Muganda, but if you're to look at the Buganda kingdom historically, as with all kingdoms, I mean, they all started small and expanded and conquered other territories and other peoples, swallowed them up, assimilated them
And
to
they
where
started speaking their languages.
exactly. So,
But-
so to if you were to point to any region of the world that claims to have a particular ethnicity, a particular kingdom or nation, essentially all of that was a product of conquest and assimilation.
But
So the
where
idea
we
of
are
listen to me,
today-
listen to me. It's kind of like the argument people have about how a rhinoceros is an endangered species, so we must flip over, without understanding that actually throughout history, 99 of all animal species that have ever existed have gone extinct. What remains today is the 1% that has it, as diverse as it currently is.
I
my
get
point my point
that.
is, so you might be losing sleep over the existing languages of today, but you're not losing sleep over the countless languages in centuries or millennia past.
Well, I'm not going
also
to
went
think about
extinct.
millennia past when there is today. And honestly speaking, if your child can learn a language, a local language, even if it's one, then why not? Because honestly, it's mainly us Africans that scoff at the fact that people are interested in preserving their local languages, because other regions are doing this. You're going to find a family of Indians that has lived in the UK for years, but they can speak their local language alongside the English. When it comes to Uganda or other African countries, English, other languages are beneath the language that we have as the official language as a country. And I find that really laughable, to say the least.
Aren't you just going to cause confusion now?
It's not confusion.
If the peoples of the different regions of the country are being taught different languages,
No, I actually have. No, it's not that they're
National
being.
confusion.
This is what you're not understanding. The argument is not that get rid of English. The argument is not that instruct children in other languages. The argument is teach them their local languages alongside the English. For instance, you're going to go to school and you're going to find French and Swahili on the curriculum, on the syllabus, but you're not going to find Runyankole, you're not going to find Luganda, you're not going to find Acholi. So the argument here is the way we give importance to these other languages, why aren't we giving importance to our local languages? Because go downtown, go to the taxi park, go up country, you're going to find people speaking their languages, but most of them maybe cannot even write them or read them. So what's so wrong about teaching children their local languages so that they can be able to read and write in that language as well?
well, in a country where we're already strained for resources to teach even the more basic practical subjects that are necessary for economic prosperity, I feel like adding a new layer of subjects to be taught, which in this case would be the languages. So, for example, the textbooks that we're going to use to teach all these other languages.
Those things
are they
are
there?
already there.
Are
I
they
mean,
there?
if we have the
The
Bible
teachers,
in
are they
different
there?
languages, let me tell you, they're there. They're there. It's just that we like to think about the negative side of things. Oh, we don't have this, we don't have that. But if we wanted to, do you know that I read Luganda?
Okay.
Profoundly. I read Luganda. Maybe.
Is that a big deal?
No, as in, I'm just giving you an example because you can't read your own language. You can't even speak it. I speak Luganda. I can read Luganda.
I can
and
read it, but I can't
write
speak it. I mean, let's be honest.
And
we
this is-
use
and
we
what
use
I'm trying to
we use
say-
the English alphabet. So.
And what I'm trying to say is this: if I can read Luganda, anyone else can read any other language. And if they have the interest to teach it, then why not? Parents are out here teaching their children to read Mandarin because, the economy and where it's going, it will be good for them. Even your local language as you live here and work here and trade here is still important to you.
I like how they write parliament in Luganda. It is written parliamenti.
Actually,
that's how it's written.
parliament.
Parliamenti, governmenti. Isn't this how it's written?
Yeah, so some of them are written like that.
Exactly. I just find that to be interesting. But anyway, I do get your point. Let's see if these plans shall be adopted. Obviously, these are rather ambitious plans. And if, as you say, everything like the foundation of what would be required is already in place, then it may not be a big stretch to go from there to now students in classrooms being taught in these languages. As for me personally, I don't know that I've made up my mind on it. So, for example, if your children ever find themselves studying in northern Uganda, so they're going to be teaching them a children.
If it is on the, I mean, I have a friend whose children, my friend is Mnyankole, her children's father is from the east, but the school where they go, one of the kids go, they teach them Luganda. So sometimes she sends me screenshots of her homework to help her because the mother is not a Muganda. And I am happy
east.
to, the kid's father is from the east, my friend is from the west,
East,
and the
which
children
east?
From Soroti, and
Okay.
from Tororo. And my friend, so the kids go to a school here in Buganda, and one of the things they teach is Luganda. So if my children went to northern Uganda and a Choli is on their syllabus, then why not? Let them study the language.
You're
I
sure?
honestly wouldn't mind that.
Then your son will come home and say, "Mommy, I want to eat sips."
Of course, that will not happen because they already have the foundation of,
Sips and
speaking
sicken.
without that accent. And even if they had the accent, what's wrong with that? All of us internationally, we all have an accent. Even the people who think they speak so much good English, when you step out of when you step out of Uganda and travel abroad, people will ask you where you come from because your accent will be distinct.
Apparently, you can't do that. Some people say that's racist. There was that controversy in the UK where some lady...
I
remember-
know. The lady that worked for the late Queen asked some black woman where she comes from, and she was offended and said it was being racist.
And of course, that was just stupid. I mean, it was a friendly question. I
But
don't
if
think she
it's
should
a
have
friendly question, you
reacted
have
that
to
way.
ask me 3 to 4 times. What are you trying to drive at?
Maybe I didn't hear you properly.
3 to 4 times. We are having a conversation, and everything I'm saying doesn't matter apart from where I'm coming from.
No, it's like, for example, it's like if you met an Indian-looking person, right, on the street, and you asked him, "Where are you from?" and he says, "Kololo." He has answered your question, but not really answered your question, because the question you're asking is really about his ethnic home and heritage, right? But it might require asking several times before it dawns on this person that that's what you're asking. He might or she might think you just mean, okay, so which suburb have I come from, right? And then he might say Kololo, and that may not be the answer you want. And then when you press on, he might say, oh, okay, well, I am from Ibanda. Like maybe that's where his parents are currently residing, having settled in Uganda many years ago, right? Now, he would have answered your question, but not really answered the question that you're asking.
But the
so
lady,
there are several layers to...
But the lady
do you
in
understand my
question
point?
explained and said that she told the lady that I live here, born and bred here, something along those lines.
Yeah.
But this lady kept insisting on where do you come from.
Of
so
course.
she was not interested. If I found Kaluya in the UK and I asked him, where do you come from? And he says, I was born and raised in the UK.
But it's a... Look, I feel like it's a very innocent question. If
it was
an
asked
Indian,
once or twice,
if an
but
Indian,
if you continue and go on and
why
on,
wouldn't
then
my
it's not
why wouldn't my
innocent.
example suffice of where you meet an Asian person, and it could be the case that this Asian person has lived here for generations. His ancestors could have been the coolies who came and built the railway in the 1800s. But it is still a valid question to ask where you're from, because really, even he would have to understand that, you know what, this person looks at me and doesn't see a black person. So
Context.
must be curious to know like where my people originate from.
Context also
That
matters.
is not a bad
Context
question.
also matters. It's not a bad question, but what are we talking about, and why is it that your interest is on that? If
I'm making conversation.
If I met a random Muganda person, I have this thing where I ask them where they come from. Oh, where do you come from? I come from Nakaseke. Where do you come from? And they're like, I come from Masaka. But if we're not talking about that and you continuously ask where I'm coming from, I'm like, dude, are you interested in knowing what we are talking about, my views on the issue at hand, or where I come from? So context. And we need to know what was the lady who worked for the Queen and the black lady she was asking where she comes from. What were they talking about?
She could have said, I grew up in in Birmingham, but my people are from Trinidad.
So why not just ask
answer
the
the question.
the way it's supposed to be? Where does your family originate from?
Because
it saves you so much time.
No, because first of all, she doesn't have to. It's a question that's innocent
Well,
enough
I don't
and can
also
be
have to
easily
answer.
No,
where
you don't.
come from.
You don't have. No, you don't. You're right. You don't have to answer it, but don't make it seem like the question is so egregious.
It depends, honestly. Context matters.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and here's the context. If you are a racialist, a person who is constantly seeking offense in every minor thing, microaggressions, like if your mental predisposition is to constantly view yourself as a victim, even the most, kind of like how you open a door for a lady. A normal lady will say, "Oh, why, thank you, sir," and will keep moving. A feminist will say, "Wait a minute. Do you think I can't open the door myself?" So that's context also.
But you see,
where
when
someone's
you
mind
say that
is
people
oriented towards victim.
Yes, there is you
victimhood.
saying that people are, or some people's minds are oriented towards victimhood, but also there is you who always thinks that when people say things, they don't have where they come from, like they don't have a foundation. They're just thinking and being racial.
That's fine, but you see, when we examine the foundation, that's where it originates usually. And look, human interaction is an awkward thing. You know, you can't read minds. You can't always know what a person is thinking and what their intentions are. But as people, I think the courteous thing to do is to normally assume the best of intentions and to not be quick to assume the worst.
But you know, the thing
motives,
about communication,
you know?
it's very easy for me and you to sit here and say the lady who was asked where she comes from was overreacting. But the thing about communication is that it's not only what is said. You have to take into consideration things like body language. How were they looking at me? How were they behaving around me? When someone says that they are feeling racially segregated, sometimes it's a combination of all those things, but you're going to just read what was written in the paper, right?
I just think the world would be a much better and more enjoyable place if you didn't always jump to conclusions about how someone wanted to do you wrong. Sometimes a question is innocent. Sometimes a gesture is friendly. It's best to start from there. And if there are other signs that show that the intentions are different, then you take it from there. But if someone just says, "Oh, you look lovely," if someone in the office says, "Oh, Olive, you look beautiful," and then, "Oh, that's sexual harassment," or like that's. It's weird.
But
we don't want to live in a world like that.
I normally see you argue that some people just, like you just said right now, that some people just want to think in terms of racism every chance they get.
Yeah.
But it's also easy for us to say that because when you're walking in Kampala, Fatboy, you're just a black man among different black men. So no one really cares about you.
Yeah.
You only start to feel that actually you're blacker than the next person.
If I met
when
a Chinese,
you leave this place,
if I met
that's when you're going to notice the microaggressions that you do not want to agree they exist. And don't tell me about the 5 minutes you'd go for trips in Europe. That is not enough.
If I met an Oriental person in Chikubo speaking Luganda, of course I'd be curious I'd be impressed that he speaks the language so fluently, and I'd be curious, hey, where you from? So should he now get angry? Oh my goodness, I'm a Ugandan. I hold a Ugandan passport. I'm married to a Ugandan.
I think you're
Ugandan
comparing
children.
apples and oranges.
Let's
continue.
It's the general principle, and I think I skew more towards friendliness and friendly intentions. And if we were to all do that, we'd get along much better. But on the proposal for regional languages to be taught in different regions, maybe it's not a bad idea. Olive has somehow convinced me of that. But we'll see if it will actually happen. Keep listening to The Fatboy Show on RX Radio.